Well, colour me impressed. Do you get it? Anyway, some people watching my Kobra 2 reviews thought I had an issue with Anycubic, but the truth was those printers were okay, but that was the problem, they were just okay. And in a role where I long for and discover new technology, I'm just not excited by mediocre. So whilst these were very definitely budget targeting machines, most likely aimed at beginners, I just didn't feel like the software or hardware was particularly beginner friendly, especially when new players in the market, you know who I mean, had moved forward so significantly. The design choices on those machines were puzzling to say the least. The Kobra 3, however, is a completely different beast, and one I am happy to say now makes Anycubic stand out from the crowd of entry-level machines all doing little more than the next. This is certainly worth your consideration for your next printer. But if Anycubic wants success, I mean real success with this one, which they honestly could have, then they can't just release it and stop here. There's more to be done yet. Let me show you what I mean. Hi, I'm Ross, and this is FauxHammer Videos. Now, I know you're going to want to compare this one to a similar printer from another brand, and so do I. But this review is dedicated to Anycubic. I'll be doing a follow-up video to summarize the differences, but this should give you enough to make an informed decision now. If you want all the spec of this printer, well, it's on the website. Here's a screenshot of it. I could talk you through it, but you could just as easily pause the video and read it. I'd rather spend more time on the fun and interesting stuff. Setup of this printer was incredible. It was decently packed for one, but what I loved the most is that 90% of it was built out of the box. All I needed to do was attach the hot end control screen and the ACE, the Anycubic color engine, which I guess we'll just call the ACE. Ooh, thumbnail idea. But even these extra bits were straightforward. The hot end installation was incredibly simple because you can just put the two top screws in loosely and use these to hang it from its frame and then guide the final two screws in before tightening everything up and connecting the data cable. The cables being in orange silicone sleeves is a nice aesthetic touch which sways away from the typical cheap approach that bed slingers have previously had. But on the flip side of that, the control screen does leave a loose ribbon cable exposed, which is a little more legacy in terms of robust design. But the rest of it is gorgeous, and it sells the belief of well engineered, like the machined frame rather than just bumming some plastic bits over the previous generation's generic aluminium frames that look like they were made out of some electrical version of Unistrut. Even the filament reel holder, which you don't need when using the ACE, slots neatly and firmly into the rear of the printer's base. And the PTFE tubes for the ACE are, sorry, I can't do it. It doesn't sound right, does it? Let me try that again. And the PTE tubes for the ACE are slotted neatly through a holder in the Z-arm and are fixed to each other and the data cable thanks to some little clips you get in the box. Overall, the whole build comes as a welcome step up from any FDM machine that Anycubic have released before. Now, where I messed up was connecting the ACE because I assumed the orange 6-pin cable connected directly to it because it was the same shape and size as the port. But it turns out the orange cable is for something underneath the Z rail and the ACE has its own grey connector. So, whoops. I probably should have read the manual more closely, or they could have created a full colour manual so I could have seen the different cable colours. But let's just blame me. At least now you know not to do this. The whole build, style and setup did impress me. It was a happy experience right from the off when I'd expected Anycubic to be little more than a cheap clone. Though, with things like the LCD ribbon cable being loose, this is where things start to cheapen a bit for the printer. But it's mild stuff. I would say actually it's just eye-rollingly mild stuff. But I've got to be honest, it does annoy me a little bit. And another thing that bothers me is, well, you remember that 6-pin grey connector for attaching the ACE to the printer? Yeah, that cable sticks out of the front of the printer. You see, I told you, it's mild, but it also could have been a much tidier implementation. Does it annoy you? It annoys me, but let's talk more about extra loose cables shortly. Now the UI is fairly straightforward, however they did bring back the stupid alphanumeric keyboard for typing in your Wi-Fi password. Again, eye-rolling stuff, but that's the only issue I really found. Once I'd correctly connected up the ACE unit, it had some good features like the ability to set the type and colour of filament, and if you use Anycubic's filament like these new Pantone colours, the ACE can actually read the colour and type automatically, though for some reason my fourth slot wouldn't detect what was actually in it, but I was still able to do this manually. And when you start a print from the UI, you can also select which colour from the ACE you want that print to be in, assuming of course you use a USB stick rather than the inbuilt wireless connection. My first print was an 11.5 minute benchy, which is pre-programmed on the printer as a test to showcase its speed, but it turns out the way it can achieve this speed is by delivering a poorer quality print result. Suffice to say, I just really wasn't impressed with this. But honestly, I've been saying this for a while with faster printers. It's great that they can all go super fast, but most of them can now go faster than PLA can actually handle. So the limitation is not printers. Having a faster printer probably won't help. The limitation is the material we're putting through it. So stop saying your printers are super fast, guys, because it doesn't mean anything. Really doesn't. The second print was a cage I found on Anycubic's Maker Online platform, which just isn't a good name at all. But anyway, we're talking about the printer. Now, Maker Online is their version of a model storefront available on their phone app and on web. And I'm pleased to see that both of these are getting much tidier and more tightly curated. TLDR, it's a far cry from the mess that Creality Cloud still is, but they're making progress too. Now this cage was printed as intended to catch flung filament every time the printer changes colour or starts a print. And that is one slight annoyance with the machine. Even if your last print was in the same colour as your current print, the machine still extrudes a full nozzle's worth of material before starting the next print. And unlike some competing printers which have actually reduced the volume of material wasted in changes, this is still quite a lot every time there's a purge, be it a colour change or starting a new print. Now I noticed I was having some first layer issues with this second print. The machine completely self-levels, so I was surprised to be getting this. And despite me re-leveling it, this first layer adherence issue continued with my first large print, which was a pyramid for my daughter who's currently learning about Egypt in school. But after the first attempt to print this pyramid failed, I thoroughly cleaned the bed with isopropanol. All of the subsequent prints were great. So I went on to printing these 4 ancient artifacts for her, which were apparently discovered within a pyramid. Some history for you here. These were discovered by a Professor Massimo Piccole in 1914, and each is intended to represent an element. I printed the earth element in an earthy beige, the water element in an oceanic blue, the wind element in green to represent leaves on the wind, and the fire element in purple because there's only 4 colours in this set and the last one was purple. And these Pantone partnered colours they've made, well, they're nice colours. I'm generally happy with how all the prints came out. Though there have been a few areas of under extrusion, you can spot them slightly on the edges of bottom and top layers. Now, considering this is Anycubic's known filament and they know the printer specs, I would have expected them to have this dialed in better before release. And bear in mind, I didn't get this printer early, I got it at the same time as the first buyers. So suffice to say, in my opinion, they've got a little bit of work to do here. Some tweaks, so to speak, in regard to those base profiles, because I've seen printers out the box which are slightly better. In the meantime, you should be able to sort stuff like this out yourself by playing with the slicer settings. But the point of these printers now, typically, is that we don't want to play around with slicer settings. Whilst similar printers may also not give you perfect prints every time, most of us aren't after perfect. We're happy enough with good enough, and having gaps in prints when using the brand's own recommended materials is damn close to, but not quite, good enough. And sure, there are people out there who can improve this in seconds, but with printers like this nowadays, it's what the majority, of my viewers at least, want from their machines. And this is so close to it that I expect a small profile update from the brand will completely sort it. But will they do one? Well, Moving on to multicolor prints, they have a few tests that come with the printer. I chose this funky gyro thing because it looked like an interesting fidget toy. As expected, this printed without issue. Well, without any technical issue anyway. You can still see the sides where it's under extruding on the edges of the print. But the thing with multicolor printing is that this is a bit of an art in itself, and for this model alone, I almost filled my printed basket with waste material. Don't get me wrong, multicolor printing is a cool feature, but there is a lot of waste, and in this case, I couldn't find anywhere in the slicer that I could change settings to reduce it. I'm not saying it's not there, I'm just saying I couldn't find it, and there's not much in terms of Anycubic support guides to explain how any of this really works, so that's something they've got to work on as well. But I'll come back to that. What I do like about these separate material management units is that inserting new filament is as easy as just putting it in and then pushing the end of your filament into a hole. No more heating up the hot end, retracting, feeding in a new reel, etc. You just load filament into this unit and push the filament into the hole, and it then pulls the rest of it in automatically for you and deals with all that for you. It's great. That's what I love about it the most. And the next best part of it is that you can load up multiples of the same filament so that when one runs out, the printer just starts printing from the next slot of the same thing. And I like convenience in printers more than anything else. But the call-out feature of the ACE is not just that it's a multi-material unit, but it also works as a filament dryer box too, but only when it's connected to a Kobra printer. There's no controls on the device. And at least for now, because I hope they fix this, to heat it up, you also need to manually tell it to do so before every single print, and you can only do this on the machine. You can't do it remotely from the slicer. Now, to me, it would make sense that this would have the option to preheat for a set time before each print starts and then maintain the heat for the length of the print. But no, you need to manually start it and tell it how long it needs to stay on for. Again, another seemingly simple integration which Anycubic have missed up till now. Also, while I'm picking on it, this latch on the front of the ACE, it's just a pain in the ass. It took me far longer than it should have to figure out how to get this open, and even when I did, it's tricky due to not having anywhere on it to decently grip, and I have small delicate hands compared to most people. Now, going back to the printer, I want to talk about the hot end and the heat bed. The bed is great. There's a filament wiper at the back left side to clean the nozzle before each print, and they send you spares in the box. And the dual-sided PEI plate is easily directed into the correct position before it magnetizes down thanks to the slots on the back edge. And this whole nozzle unit can be easily accessed by popping off the front cover, releasing a latch and removing the cables. The printer comes with a 0.4 nozzle, and I can see on Anycubic's website they appear to be releasing a 0.2, a 0.6 and a 0.8 nozzle soon at reasonable prices, but that's just for the nozzle. I can't see that they're releasing a whole hot end unit so far to take advantage of this quick release mechanism, but I do expect it's coming soon. And unlike the Kobra 2, which had a proprietary nozzle and no noticeable benefit for having one, I've got no issue here where we get the benefit of quick nozzle changes, because to me, when they finally break, this feature is the difference between, ooh, I can just swap it now and print this thing I want, and, oh Christ, I'll do it later, which becomes 3 weeks later. And because I'm committed, or thought it was cool, I wanted to push this review further. I also got the live view camera. Now, this was an interesting device because it's just a camera with a circuit board and a cable. You actually need to print the chassis for yourself. It is a cheap way to do it, but it's also kind of quirky and cool. Now, I printed mine on one of my other printers, not because of any dislike for this machine, but just because the other printer already had orange filament loaded in it, and I wanted to match the color of the cables when mounting this accessory. Call me anal, but I like it when things match. But when you attach this, it's another cable from that device strewn across your work surface, and then it plugs into the front. So once again, call me anal for not liking this, but surely I'm not the only one out there who's put off a bit by the lack of neatness here. All of the effort that went into making this a sexy printer goes out of the window when these accessories are attached. Could we really not have had these ports in the back? But anyway, the camera works as you can view it remotely in the slicer and in the phone app, though I am frequently getting disconnect issues when using it. Hopefully a firmware update or two will resolve that problem. But at night, the prints are barely visible because the light is mounted into the hot end rather than next to the camera. It's enough to spot errors, but not enough to make good time-lapse videos. But the light on the hot end does also light up the Anycubic logo too, which is pretty. And as of right now, as I'm writing my script, there's no time-lapse function, but Anycubic have assured me this is coming very soon, like in the next week. Now I'd wait, but I need these printers off my desk so I can get on with testing others. But to finish off, let's just quickly talk about the slicer. Now, I previously remarked in the Kobra 2 reviews that Anycubic just aren't good enough developers to spend time creating their own slicer. And I kind of feel like I should probably be eating my hat about now, because the Anycubic slicer is, well, it's fairly decent. Now, this is another fork of Prusa slicer, but Anycubic have done a few of their things to simplify the user experience for beginners. You just install your printer, select your filament type, and choose from the 3 available profiles for quality, normal, and draft, which are in an odd order, but basically they're 0.16, 0.20, and 0.28 layer heights. Below this, you can choose basic options like support type and whether you want a brim. All of the more advanced settings are available, just much deeper in the system. And if your printer and the slicer are both signed into the same Anycubic cloud account, you can also read the filament information from your machine, keeping both of them in sync. The functional controls are on the left side of the screen, with the 2 most useful new features being Support Painter and Color Painter, the latter of which allows you to color the model by face using an adjustable paint bucket tool, or you can just draw on it with various more direct painting options. But even having said all that, I do miss the workflow and layout of Orca Slicer. Maybe that's just because it's what I'm used to now, and I can't even think of a way to show this. This one just still feels clunky in comparison. Clunky. I think Orca Slicer, which is obviously based on another slicer, just has more of a user-oriented workflow and user experience, user interface design language going off. Wherever you think things would be intuitively is typically where they are. Here, it's more of a, we made our own thing and we've made it so it can be simpler, but it hasn't been laid out in such a way that really makes it user focused. Does that make sense? I guess this is where I want to make the rest of the point that I opened at the start of the video. There's more for Anycubic to do. Take, for example, this free gift you get with the printer. I got a sunglasses component kit, and it's a nice little extra which, well, it'll encourage new 3D printing adopters to make their first functional thing. Now, this is nice as a gift, but the near 20 quid they're charging for this pack on its own is either a typo or a joke, because you get a case, 2 plastic lenses, 4 screws, and oddly 3 nose pads, enough to make 1 1/4 pairs of glasses, but this isn't worth anywhere near 20 quid. But the point I was getting to is, with this, just like on the camera box that I got, there's QR codes, just like the ones that come up on the printer's screen offering support. But these all take you to the same page. You don't get taken to a page for the glasses or a page for the camera or the actual issue you're having on the printer, just the generic Anycubic support page. I found the camera instructions and files at the absolute bottom of that page. For the glasses kit, I actually had to Google Anycubic glasses, and it provided me with a download option which I followed, sliced, and printed 2 pairs so I can have mix and match arms and frames. But it turns out, even though the name was the same, this is actually the wrong set. It took me another 30 minutes to figure out where the actual glasses were, and it was poorly hidden deep within the same page. And that's mildly annoying. But that kind of paints the picture as to how Anycubic are still approaching this printer right now. They've got all of the right pieces, but they haven't connected any of the dots properly to make this a good experience for the beginner. But it's still a good printer. and it's a lot closer to the current competition, but it's also still quite far away. Hopefully this is something that Anycubic can fix, because all of these things are minor, they're just mildly annoying. A few things on this printer have been mildly annoying, and aside from the current cable locations, it's all software and it's all fixable. But one place that Anycubic have not historically shown significant value is in well-communicated, direct and regular software updates. It's all been embarrassing bug fixes at best, with very few notable feature enhancements or additions. Now with the Kobra 3, I have hope, because it's a chance for Anycubic to really impress the market and take back some of the share they've lost, well, the share everyone has lost in the FDM space. But to do that, they need to refine their profiles. They need to give us time-lapse features in a way we can easily access the footage. They need to make the slicer a tad cleaner and make obviously required features available and or more obvious. They need the ACE to automatically preheat your filament and keep it heated and dry throughout each print for the duration of that print. I also don't need the printer to expunge material between prints when both prints are the same color. It's just wasteful. And to help them more, they really need to improve their support guides, because this is where the competition have got a couple of years head start. The biggest problem for most people when 3D printing is knowing what to do when things go wrong. And if Anycubic can actually take ownership of that and deliver the answers rather than just relying on the community in their Facebook and various other groups, where one person will ask a question, they'll get the right answer, the commentary on that post will be closed, and then somebody else has got the same question a week later, or somebody else has got a tweak or a better way to solve that problem and they can't communicate on it. It's mildly annoying and frustrating stuff. They need to own supporting their machines. And if they can do that, they have an absolute killer machine on their hands. So should you buy this printer? Well, I guess I hope you do. I hope loads of people buy this machine, because that shows with money that this is what people want, because this is what people want. This is what I want. I've spent ages whinging about brands being less than when it comes to competing in this space. I've used phrases like, they just don't get it. This is a sign that Anycubic are starting to get it, but the success of this machine will not just be reliant on how much customers are willing to invest, but how much Anycubic are willing to invest. If this machine is treated like a platform rather than just this year's latest model, I think we are on for an absolute winner. So watch out, competitors, because these guys are swiftly creeping up behind you. I want to say thanks for watching, and a huge thanks goes out to our members who are on screen now. Please consider joining them so you can get early access to our videos, exclusive content. I'll speak to you directly on our Discord server. You get a special role on our Discord server. Please join our Discord server anyway. It's free, links in the description. I haven't printed anything by Loot Studios this time. I meant to be promoting them. There's links for them in the description. Please check them out. Yeah, that's everything. End of this week. Good video. Hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You know all that. I don't need to go on about it. So until next time, multipass. FauxHammer out.